the downside about the typical American diet is there's a certain amount of ingredients, specifically wheat and dairy. Those are the two biggest ones. They're in everything.
We are creative, we are constructive, we are imaginative, we are exploring, we are creative solutions. Hi, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you'll hear interviews with innovative creative artists, entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders. You'll have a front row seat as they explore their internal, uncharted waters about what inspires them to grow, achieve, and innovate. Get their insights and realizations as I tease out answers to questions they've never pondered before. You'll also learn how to supercharge your innovative drive, mindfulness, and communication skills so you can succeed. This episode is brought to you by my favorite productivity hack, the Brain FM app, this podcast's host, Podbean, as well as my book, Speak From Within, Engage, Inspire, and Motivate Any Audience. Hello, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Super grateful you've taken the time to be here and to listen, and you are in for a treat because this week's guest is fabulous. Let me tell you about Nikki Golly. So, Nikki is a dedicated health enthusiast, seasoned in nutrition and wellness, and focuses on helping families overcome food sensitivities and combat constipation. Yes, Nikki loves poop. And that's a big, big part of what we're going to be talking about. It's important to every single person on the planet. And so after overcoming her 27-year battle with constipation, she's driven to guide families toward optimal health and happiness. With a background in nutrition and experience from working in a vitamin store, Nikki utilizes her expertise to provide quick relief and genuine healing to her clients. Nikki, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. I'm excited.
I am too. So the way you introduced yourself when I first met you was, my name is Nikki and I love poop. And I was like, this is awesome. So I know that you say that you had a 27-year battle with constipation, which just boggles my mind. I can't imagine that kind of stress on the organism. But what brought you to the realization that poop was the solution?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Honestly, so I said I was 27 years I was constipated, but I would say 20 of that, I didn't know that I was constipated.
Mm.
I just knew that my norm was to go poop like once or twice a week.
Wow.
I'm here to tell, and that's exactly why I've kind of jumped full force into, hey, let's talk about something that nobody wants to talk about. But of course, in my own pizzazz, I can kind of bring levity to that conversation because everybody poops,
Sure.
but not everybody poops well or often. Or so it's kind of really important that, hey, bring that topic up. Did you know that you're supposed to poop every day? Like that is essential for most people, for everybody, actually. Ideally, it's supposed to be 2 to 3 times a day, but I never knew this. It's not that I was from a family that we didn't talk about things. It just never came up because I never knew that I was supposed to talk about it. I just knew that I was sick all the time.
Mm.
I had ear infections. Had I would get strep throat constantly. Believe it or not, I had strep throat so many times that I became allergic to the antibiotics they give you for strep throat.
Wow.
I was just miserable. The seasons, when spring came around, it would just be like, oh, yay, beautiful, everything's blooming. I would be miserable. Eyes itching, watering, nose running, just feeling miserable. And it all came back down to I was eating something every day that my body was sensitive to and allergic to, and it was causing all kinds of reactions within my body. But I didn't know that. So that's why I'm kind of double downing on the conversation like, hey, let's talk about poop. Poop's important. Did you know it's super important? And that also brings me to one of the topics that I bring up often is that colon and rectum cancer is the number 4 cause of cancer, or the number 4 diagnosed cancer in the United States. And it's also the number 4 cause of death among all cancers. And it's preventable if we talk about and we focus on what's coming out of our body, because our body is telling us things in what we're eating. If you're not absorbing it right, you're not pooping right. You're not pooping good. You run towards either constipation, not pooping every day, or diarrhea, on the other hand, pooping 4 or 5 times a day, or even 3 sometimes can be diarrhea. So it's an interesting topic, but it's important, and there's not many people that are out talking about it. And so that's why I think it's really important, and that's why I'm here.
That's phenomenal. And you said so many things that I'm like, I prepared a bunch of questions, and you said just in these last couple of minutes, you said so much that I want to
Yeah,
talk about that I think I'm gonna have to
yeah.
throw all my questions out the window. So, okay. You
That's all
said
right.
it's so interesting to me because you said if we don't absorb the food correctly, that's going to cause all sorts of issues when we eliminate whatever waste products we're going to eliminate. And
Correct.
the thing that I'm curious about is what is the process there? Because okay, I know you eat, the digestive process happens, and then you poop out the wastes. But
Correct.
there is something going on if colon and rectal cancers are so prevalent, and you're mentioning food as part of that equation. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is that that eating non or suboptimally will have a contributing factor to either cancer or just unhealthy pooping?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a fantastic question. Great follow-up. Um, Really, when you think about it, first, digestion starts in the mouth first. Most people don't chew very much, maybe 5 times we swallow our foods whole. um, and then it goes into your stomach, and then if you actually stretched out the small intestine and the large intestine, if you move that and spread it all out, it's like a mile long. It is crazy at just how much goes on that we don't pay attention to. It all happens without our knowledge. It's not muscles that we consciously move. There's muscles that happen. There's movement throughout your digestive system. But then we eat suboptimally, as you said. We eat a lot of processed foods, inflammatory foods, kind of cooking oils and that kind of stuff can actually cause inflammation. And the more inflamed our gut is, the more particles of food actually get into our bloodstream. And
Hmm.
particles of food shouldn't be in our bloodstream. So,
Mm-hmm.
our bloodstream should just have, I mean, your red and white blood cells, like those are important, but your nutrients, your vitamins and minerals, and then carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So just the building blocks of food. But when your gut's inflamed, I always tell people, like, open up, like if you put your hands together and you kind of spread your fingers apart, what do you see? You typically see holes in between your fingers.
Sure.
When you see holes in your, that's kind of does the same thing when your gut is inflamed. It produces, or it opens up, so there's holes, so then food particles actually get through. So a lot of people actually have heard this term leaky gut.
Mm.
It's essentially the same thing. If your gut is inflamed, it leaks through, or it allows foods through into your bloodstream. And then the body goes, wait, this shouldn't be here. So anything, your body's smart. So it's like, okay, things that are not supposed to be in your bloodstream, they're either a pathogen, a virus, bacteria, things that need to be attacked. But in all reality, a lot of times it's food. And then our body starts attacking those foods, and then starts creating antibodies against it, because that's our body's immune system. Then you create antibodies against food that you're eating all the time. This happens so often when people are like, oh my God, I absolutely love bread, like wheat products and um, cakes and cookies. And it's the downside about the typical American diet is there's a certain amount of ingredients, specifically wheat and dairy. Those are the 2 biggest ones. They're in everything. It's in food already, but there's specific foods. It's in kind of everything. So we have kind of an allergic response to it just because it is in everything. It's so common. So our body creates antibodies against it. That's just one piece about the absorption. But think about if your gut's inflamed, or you're not eating enough fiber to move things through, going back to the poop. If things are stuck in your digestive system, it slows things down. It's essentially foods are kind of sitting there rotting when they're supposed to be pushed through, and like, you absorb what you can, you eliminate and flush down the toilet what you don't. And a lot of times that's not happening, especially when people are backed up, which happens a lot because nobody talks about it. Like, no one says, "Hey, are you pooping every day?"
Wow. That's
Right?
so yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And it's also, yeah, I remember there was a kid's book called Everybody Poops, right? There was
Yes.
and it was a way, I think, an attempt to get kids to start learning about the fact that this is a normal part of the body's process. And no, you're not going to want to play with your poop, but at the same time, there is something very powerful about understanding why it's there and
Yep.
what your body's doing. But but it's interesting. I remember, I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Friends, but
Yeah.
they sent each other pictures of each other's poops.
Oh my gosh. I didn't
Yeah,
watch that episode.
but what they did, it was through emojis. So they would be like, they sent a two and a dot and a question mark, and what that meant was that was the shape the poop took in the commode after they pooped. So they were
Oh,
actually,
interesting.
yeah, so they were actually talking about poop in that way, pretty, pretty freely and in a funny way. And like you're doing, you're talking about it in a way that's engaging people. And it engages me in part because for me, and I'm going to be very honest about this, what affects my poop is stress. And so if I'm
Yes.
stressed out, everything in my body goes wonky. And so I'd love it if you would talk a little bit about how understanding our body's stress response might also affect our, I will say, quality and frequency of poop.
Oh my God, I love that question. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. The stress response. Well, think about stress. Stress, your body gets stressed because of, at least if you dial way back to the evolution of humans and where we came from, stress was like, oh my God, there's something that's going to eat me outside my cave. I
Right.
need to stay safe. I need to outrun this thing. I need to hide from it. I need to. And then fast forward to today. So before it was great. So now today, that same stressors, instead of a saber-toothed tiger outside your cave going to eat you, now it's traffic. It's in-laws, it's your pets or your children or your spouse, or it's just like everything is causing this stress response in our body. But the stress response is run, fight, hide. So what happens when you can't really run, fight, or hide from the situation, from the traffic or the loved one or the in-laws for so many people? So what you're doing is you're essentially pushing on the gas because your body's like, run, fight, hide, get out, get out, get out, get out. But then you're like, wait, this is a person that I care about, and I have to like push on the brakes because I'm not going to run from them. I'm not going to punch them in the face. I'm not going to do anything. So essentially, you're pushing on the gas. Your
Right.
body's sending all these signals to your body, and then you're pushing on the brakes. So you're kind of stopping it, which sends massive confusion through your body. Your body's sending
Mm,
all these hormones to like, get out of this situation, get out of this situation. And then you're going, no, 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 I can't get out of this situation. So then your body's in a standstill. You're
mm,
confused. It sends all these signals in your body, and then you slow everything down. But your body is designed to do that. You're designed to go in through stress, but for a short amount of time. If you think about, I mean, most people have watched like a tiger chasing gazelle. Like, you see this burst of energy, this gazelle is running for its life and it escapes narrowly, and then everything calms down and it goes back to eating, and it's like aware of its surrounding, but it calms back down. We don't do that.
mm.
we just go run, 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 and then you go to the next thing, and then you're more stressed about that, and then you have a bills, and then you get a mail or you get a text message, and it's like it's constant. So when we're in constant stress or fight or flight, you're just in go, go, go mode. There is no rest, healing, calming. So you actually have to physically do that. You have to consciously slow your brain pattern down. Like, okay, like relieve the stress, as if it's meditation or deep breathing or just calming things down. But I always talk about the two. Stress is the sympathetic nervous system. That's also another name for your stress response, is your sympathetic nervous system. But there's also your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the one that most people don't talk about.
Mm.
That's the one that helps with digestion. So they're kind of like a teeter-totter. So you have your stress response, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and then you have your rest and your digest and your healing system, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. So if your stress is always on, are you going to digest well? Like, you can't. Your body isn't designed for that. You're designed to handle stress and then calm the stress down, increase that parasympathetic nervous system, and rest, calm, digest, sleep. And it's that teeter-totter balance that we in today's society is really hard unless you consciously know about it and have tools. And that's what one of the things that I do with a lot of clients, because it's important. We're run by stress. Like, unless you consciously pay attention to it, you're stressed all the time. And there's just really hard to get around that.
For sure. And it's interesting. I've always thought that the sympathetic nervous system it feels like a misnomer because sympathetic feels like, oh, you poor baby, let's
Right?
calm down. And instead it's the run, run, save yourself, So, and the
Yeah.
parasympathetic is that meditation. And that's something that I do, for example, is I meditate every day and I
Awesome.
do things, do yoga and things like that. But
Yeah.
what's interesting to me about what you were saying just now is that when we're in that stress situation and it will and your endocrine system is throwing all this cortisol at you and all sorts of stuff is going on, and I have hypothyroidism, so my stress level is always going to be on a weird teeter totter. And so when you're in that space, it's very hard to be able to go, okay, let me just calm down, let me breathe through it, because in that moment you're going, I'm about to die, even though you're not
Right.
necessarily about to die. So what is your guidance for someone who you mentioned meditation and various relaxation techniques, but what if someone is really stressed out in the moment? Because I know, for example, and I'm just going to talk about my poop because why not? That's what we're doing today.
Yeah. Yay.
Um, if I'm stressed out, I will sometimes have that immediate response of I have to go poop, right?
Yep.
So my body
Yep.
just goes into mode. So,
Yep.
what is your guidance for someone who is going through a stress response and the physiological manifestation of that, I'll say, is that all of a sudden, oh my stars, I have to poop. What do you tell someone who's in that state? How do you get them through it?
Right. First, it's that I would say pre-paving, when you're doing meditations, that kind of thing is amazing to kind of lower your overall stress response. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it happens. And I'm not going to say don't go to the bathroom, because especially when your body's like in major stress, what happens is your body goes, I don't have the time to digest this. So just get it out and let's move on.
Mm.
So get it out. So go to the bathroom, get it out. But then what you want to do is you can calm yourself down. And one of the easiest things to do in the moment is focusing on your breath.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you always have with you. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to like forget it at home or anything. It's like something that we always have.
Sure.
There's so no matter what the situation is, you can always go back to your breath and slow it down. So again, when we're in stress response, we breathe just into our upper lungs and we just breathe rapidly. Like, that's, even if it's not quite that response, your heart rate increases. You kind of do, even if you don't know it or not. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing is to focus on filling up your lower lungs, like get a full deep breath. And one of my absolute favorite things to talk about in recent years is called box breathing. It's also called tactical breathing. Believe it or not, the Navy SEALs use it
Mm-hmm.
because it's so powerful. And it's, again, going back, focusing on your breath. So what it is that you breathe like you're in a box, essentially, or you breathe like a box. So you breathe in for, I'd say, a count of 4, because it's going to slow you down. As long as you're not breathing, as long as you're not counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Which, if you can slow that down, if you start there, that's okay. But you breathe in for a count of 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you hold full. Like, you hold your breath for a count of 4, and then you breathe out for a count of 4, and then you hold empty for a count of 4. So if you think about it, it goes 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold. So it looks like essentially a box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the amazing, because it's not a breath that we normally naturally have. We don't hold at the top and hold at the bottom. That's just not something we always do. So by counting, focusing on your breath, and doing a rhythm that's outside your normal range will kind of slow the brain down and slow the body down. Because if you're holding, you can't be panicking. Like, it's kind of two separate things. So that's one thing that you can do, like, in the moment. And you can do it at any place. You can do it in the car. You can go in before an important meeting, before an interview like this. I mean, there's granted, this is not an interview. This is more of a conversation, but you can do it preemptive, and you can do it after the fact. It still is super, super powerful.
I love that. Yeah. And if you're listening to this, I've talked about this Navy SEAL breathing. I'm going to put the link to the video I made in the show notes so that you can get access to it and try what Nikki's suggesting that you try. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I talk about the 4-part breath a lot because it's it is powerful. And it's
it
one of the
is.
things that allows you to slow down even if you're still walking. Like, I'll do it sometimes when I'm walking. If I live in New York City, and so sometimes people are stressful and things are going on, but
Yeah,
I will time it to my steps, for example. So I'll take 4 steps and inhale, and then I'll hold for 4 steps, and then I'll exhale for 4 steps, and then I'll hold for 4 steps. And that, like what Nikki's saying, if you're listening to this, you definitely want to try something like that before you're freaking out, if you can. But if you're already
right.
freaking out, just try it. You'll be amazed at what happens. So,
Yeah.
first of all, yay! Thank you for bringing that up. It's one of my favorite things. Uh,
Yay.
I do want to go back. See, I'm like, you said all this stuff at the beginning, and I'm like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
make sure we talk about it. And here's the thing. You said chewing, and that most of us, myself included, probably do not chew enough for long enough. What does that mean? And what do we need to do to help ourselves chew better?
Well, there's multiple aspects of that. But first, we just eat so fast. Most of us, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie, I'm fit in that category too. I am a practice, I practice what I preach with all of my clients. I think it's really important. But sometimes you eat fast because it's our culture too. Um, so eating fast doesn't allow us much time to get into that rest and digest. Again, we're still in stress. So if we're still in stress and we're shoveling a bunch of food in, chewing it a few times before swallowing it, your body's not going to have the true chance to absorb all it can out of the food. Plus, go back to the foods that we're eating, and then chewing. Again, I'm guilty of this, but we're supposed to chew like 30 times. I think it's like 26 times before you swallow it, because
Mhm.
the first step of digestion is in the mouth. There's actually enzymes that you produce in your mouth that help break down the food. I've given it as an example for certain clients to kind of slow down, like chew, like count it 26 times. Like, it is weird.
It is.
Even for me, it's like, wow, it's like by the time you're done chewing 26 times, it's almost complete mush in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels weird because it's so outside of our norm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
For
it
sure.
does slow things down, because you think about it, that's the design of our mouth, is to chew things. That's why we have so many teeth. We chew and we grind things up. So therefore it creates more surface area for it when it's going into our stomach and into our small intestine, there's more surface area for your body to absorb things, but instead of just big chunks. So that is a big piece. I don't know if I answered your question. There was something else that I was going to say.
No, that was perfect. And it
Okay.
is interesting to me because to me, my goal is to chew each bite 18 times. That's my goal
Yeah.
because I know it's better for me. But I
Right.
have to say by about 18, 19 chews, I guess is
Yeah.
the right way of saying it, my food tastes gray. It no longer has any actual taste. And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so do you have any guidance for that? I mean, people chew food quickly and swallow it because it still tastes good, I think. And
Right.
we're not paying attention to it. So one of the things I'm trying to do is sort of get really mindful about chewing and making sure, and I'm trying to make it a game with myself to
Mm.
chew the food right to the point where it starts tasting gray and then I'm letting myself swallow. So when you're talking to someone about chewing and we say chew 32 times, is there anything that you can suggest to have people want to do it? Like I've made a game of it, but is there anything other than you will find it a better thing for your health? Because that does not seem to be
Right.
enough of a motivator for people. So
100%.
what do we do to motivate people for something like chewing that they do 3 times a day at least?
Right. Right. Yeah. Chew multiple times for each meal. Yes. Yes. That honestly, if you can make a game of it, that's the best because gamification makes anything more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could do something like that, but as far as making it more pleasant, seasoning sometimes, I would say not staying away from salt as much as possible, but
Mm-hmm.
actually doing different seasonings or spices and things like that can make it a little bit more enjoyable. But it's a tough one. It's really that's kind of a catch 22 and I'm open to learning more about it, but I really have no idea at this point except trying to make it more fun.
Yeah, and that for me, anytime I can make a game of things like that, I do. For example, I've had a rule for the last 26 years about yoga that my rule is I don't have to do yoga every day. What I have to do every day is I have to unroll the mat and step on it. That is my requirement. And if
Yeah.
I'm in a hurry and I need to just get off right off the mat, then I'm allowed to do that and I don't have to worry. But I can count on two hands the number of times I've stepped right off the mat. Most of the time when I'm already there, I'm able to
Yeah.
go, okay, I'm just going to go do my yoga. And it might be just 15 minutes, but that's good if I get there. So I'm
That's
wondering
beautiful.
oh, thank you. But I'm wondering with something like chewing, you said spices and herbs, which I think is a great idea. Certainly anything that would make the savory food, taste a little bit more savory would be great. Personally, I'm not a big salt fan. I can't stand salt. So I
Right.
never salt my food. My downfall is sugar, sugar, sugar,
Sweet.
sugar, sugar, sugar.
Yeah. It's
So
usually people are one or the other. It's
yeah,
usually a salt fiend or a sugar fanatic. Those are
I
two.
pick me sweet, sour, savory. Those are my, if I never taste salty or bitter, I would be very happy. But sugar is so pervasive. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that you think sugar is a slippery slope when it
Yep.
comes to our health. Can you talk a little bit about what sugar does to us and why it might not be the best thing to eat? I'll put it that way.
That was a good way to put it. Good way to put it. Well, if you again go back to the evolution of the human race, we are designed to like salt, fat, and sugar, especially fat. I mean, in this circumstance, fat and sugar, right? Because those usually go hand in hand. They make things taste really good.
Oh,
It's
yes.
because sugar is an energy source. It really is an energy source. So it would make us as humans when we're in the hunter gatherer phase of life, the to go out and find fruit trees, find things that taste sweet because it's
Mm,
good for us, because we need the energy, need the sugar. But now we don't need to find those things. We went from having food Then we had the Industrial Revolution and agriculture and all that, and now we have food readily available all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the best foods, but foods that are, it's so easy to find food for
Mm-hmm.
most people.
Mm-hmm.
And we find too much of it. And we can find things because ding, 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 food companies know this,
Mm.
that we have an addiction to salt, fat, and sugar. So they make products that are high in salt, fat, and sugar. But in nature, things that have salt, fat, and sugar are usually harder to get. Like salt doesn't actually happen much in nature.
Mm.
We use that to preserve foods, and now we've used way too much of it. So we have 4 different mechanisms within our body to preserve salt, because salt is so important and it's so low in nature. But sugar, on the other hand, our body uses sugar and it sends reward signals into your brain. It's
Mm.
like, yes, this is it. You found the jackpot. Sugar is amazing. Believe it or not, the same signals or the same areas of your brain light up with drugs like cocaine. It lights up the same
Hmm.
signals in your brain as sugar. So it
Wow.
is legitimately addictive. There is
I
no way around it. It is
Yeah.
addictive because it sends off this like, oh my God, dopamine rush. Sugar is fantastic. But this is where the food companies take advantage of us.
Mm.
They add things with lots of sugar. Believe it or not, salt is in so many things that are sweet. It is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just shocking. But that they take advantage of that sugar and that fat combination, that they make this bliss point of food. And this bliss point of food is different for every manufactured product, but it has the same like, ah, like, oh my God, I gotta eat more. I need to eat more. I need to buy more. I need to eat it again. It's so good. Like it kind of gets you down that path that it can be challenging to
Mm.
get off that bandwagon, because sugar is an addiction. It is there. I wish there was a way to like not have it signal the same thing in your brain, but it was designed for a reason to help us survive as a species. Now it's kind of our downfall. So I call it like a slippery slope. It is easier if you can limit it or not do it for a certain period of time. Like I would have people clean out sugar, like get rid of sugar from their diet for 2 weeks.
Mm.
Usually you're great. Day 1, not so bad. Day 2, getting worse. Day 3, you want to kill everyone around you.
That's the way I am when I try to give up caffeine. Yes, I
Yep.
understand.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes day 2.5, maybe day 3, because believe it or not, we actually cultivate, when we eat a lot of sugar, we cultivate the bacteria that like sugar in our gut. So not only is the reward signal in your brain fighting you, but when you clean out of sugar and caffeine's a little different, but clean out sugar, what's happening is they're actually dying off by day 3. That
Mm-hmm.
bacteria that feeds on sugar. So not only do you have your brain battling with you, you have this die off of bacteria in your stomach, which sends signals to your brain, because our gut's communicating with our brain way more than we understand. And so that die-off is like, no, you must eat sugar because I'm gonna die and I can't do that. So it's an amazing like push and pull. But if you can eliminate it for, if you can get past day 5, you are in the clear. Like after that, it makes it so much easier. It's that reward signal kind of calms down, and the die off is like happening. So make sure to drink lots of water if you do a sugar detox. But it's so powerful. But it makes it easier to stay away from it. But once you do, man, it's the slippery slope. Even if you stay off of it for 6 months and you eat something that's like super sugary, I know like holidays come around and people have start with Halloween where you get lots of candy, then you go to pies and cookies on Thanksgiving, and then Christmas kind of the same thing, and then alcohol, add that in there. That's
Mm.
also a sugar producer. It is definitely a slippery slope, and it just makes it just So I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and it fascinates me in part because I love sugar, and I went sugar free for 7 years and was it was
Congrats.
thank you, but you know, again, once I started eating it, it was
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I would like to be able to do honestly, and I don't know how often you work with your clients on this. I'd like to be able to do sugar, or well, for me, always chocolate, uh, in moderation. That to me is the thing that I want to be able to do. But at the same time, I think the psychology around that becomes really tricky because we do have, you know, so many of us are walking around with yeast overgrowth. And like you said, there are physical clamorings for the stuff that we're trying to moderate.
Yes.
So when you're working with people and you're going, okay, for someone like me who's a sugar fiend or someone who's a salt fiend or whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier, oh, you can put spices in or anything like that. Are there any, and you're probably going to go, no, just stay away from it. But I'll ask, are there any sugar substitutes, things that, like, for example, instead of glucose, you might eat fructose or something like that, that you would
Right.
say, yeah, if you,
Actually, there is. I'm going to save
yay.
you here. There is. It's not quite the same. It's not sugar, but cinnamon. Cinnamon is an amazing spice that helps to actually balance your blood sugars, but
Mm-hmm,
it also has a sweetness to it itself.
mm-hmm,
You can use cinnamon in a lot of things that gives it that sweetness, kind of balances blood sugars, and then kind of satisfies, not quite, it's not going to be like chocolate. I wish, yeah, even I get it. There's nothing going to nothing going to compare to the satisfaction of chocolate, um but cinnamon is a really good thing to use in cooking in general instead of sugar,
mm-hmm.
because they can give you that like feeling of, ooh, this is good, this is tasty, this is, it gives that mouth feel satisfaction, but without the sugar.
Mm. I like cinnamon very much, and I have it every day in a little powder I made up with turmeric and cinnamon and various and ginger and blah blah blah. That's part of my morning
Nice.
routine. The
Okay.
the yeah, I'm trying. Believe it or not, I am trying,
No,
but
I believe you. You've got a lot of great things that you're doing. It's exciting to hear.
but but having said that, with chocolate, for example, I will go for the most chocolate, the least sugar, you know,
Yeah.
85% chocolate, 90% chocolate, and I'll have little bits of it in my morning smoothie. That's because chocolate by itself is not bad for you at all. In fact, it's good for you. But
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are a lot of us out here who are kind of going, okay, I'm working on this, but I don't know what to do exactly. And many of us end up going and sort of facing ourselves towards vitamins, towards supplements, because we're not sure. And you have all this, you need to have magnesium and you need to have manganese and you need to have calcium and all of these other things. But
Yes.
people aren't sure exactly what to do. Like you think you're trying to do well. I think I'm trying to do well. I think I'm on the right track. But am I don't know. And so someone like you who's you know, working in nutrition and worked with supplements,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? How is it a good idea to take them? Should we be looking at supplements as a way of sort of not modifying but supplementing their supplements? That's what the word is for. But and here's why I'm asking, honestly, Nikki, is
Yeah.
because I worked in soil science in NASA for a long time, and I know that the nutrients that are normally in soil that
Yes.
grows our crops are it's they're depleted from what they were even just 100
Definitely.
years ago, right?
Yep.
So we're not getting these essential nutrients from the food as much. And I know, for example, that in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, but also in other parts of the South in the USA and in parts of Africa, people eat soil directly sometimes, especially pregnant women. They've had studies that shown pregnant women craving soil because it was giving them sort of primary nutrients by eating it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Because they're not
so
getting from the food. Yep.
right. And so talk to me about supplements and whether or not, I mean, I'm not going to go eat soil, because A, I'm not pregnant, but B, I've seen too many. I had a dog for years. I'm not eating soil because I know what dogs do on soil. But
Right, right.
but what do we do when it comes to supplements, especially if the food we're eating is either nutrient poor because the food itself is nutrient poor, or because our diets, the things that we're eating, generally speaking, are maybe too processed to have those nutrients.
That's exactly, you hit on so many points there. Are the things that we grow, even if you eat lots of fruits and vegetables, which I am a big proponent of eating more fruits and vegetables. I will never say not to eat more fruits and vegetables. But in recent years, I'd say in the last 15 years, there used to be a campaign that would be like 5 a day, eat your 5 a day fruits and veggies. Well, in the last 10 years, they upped it from 5 a day to 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables
Hmm.
because of that very reason. Because we're not getting the right nutrients, we're not getting enough nutrients in the food because of the way that it's grown. It's a lot of nutrient we need to put back in the soil. Farmers don't have the money for that, really. They put in the most important things like nitrogen and like the things that make things look pretty, but not necessarily the most healthy. And I've been studying because of this. I am a big nerd. I've been studying supplements since before I got my nutrition degree. I started working in a supplement store and just diving into what supplements can do and looking at all these different ailments. And I still use supplements in my practice because it is so powerful. Because, like I said, there is not enough nutrition in our foods anymore. And I'm of the school of thought of less is more. If you
Hmm.
can do one thing that satisfies 25 different aspects of life, then I'm all for it.
Right.
Instead of doing like a magnesium and a calcium and a this and a that and a this, like if you can find one thing that satisfies most of those, then that's what you should do. That's where I would come back down to researching down the rabbit hole of looking at multivitamins. I used to be a big proponent of looking at multivitamins or taking a multivitamin because it's kind of that same school of thought. But the thing about multivitamins is most of them are synthetic.
Hmm.
We're not labs, we're humans. So our body doesn't know what to do with a whole huge dose of synthetic vitamins. Also, the difference between my schooling and most people that recommend supplements or even in the nutrition field is that one of the only ways can become toxic in certain vitamins and minerals is through supplementation.
Really?
So when I was going to school, I was like, oh my God, supplements, this will be perfect. Like, this will go with nutrition. Like, no, all of my upper level professors recommended against supplements because of there's no regulation in the supplement industry.
Mm.
And you can they can produce because the companies don't really know. Sometimes the companies don't really know what they're doing, and they give you a high dose of, say, zinc. I see these ones all the time. A real high level zinc. People take zinc because yes, it's good for your immune system. But the ones that I see are like 50 and 100 milligrams, and people are taking that every day. We need 15 if we were to supplement it, and I don't recommend taking it every day. And if you do, it can actually make you copper deficient. So it's like
Mm.
different, you override mechanisms that make you deficient in other things when you supplement single things a lot. So then going back to the multivitamin, I jumped down the rabbit hole, and again, most of it was synthetic. So if you can find something that's not synthetic, so whole food, what I would recommend finding is something that's a multi-nutrient, not necessarily a multivitamin.
Ooh, I
There's
like
a
the
specific
distinction there.
yeah, so multi-nutrient, if you can find that. There's a couple of companies that actually have stuff like that. It's like fruits and veggie type things.
Hmm.
I'm usually not a product pusher or anything like that, but there is one product that I found in my search many years ago, and I absolutely love it. It is a network marketing company, but I actually like it that way because they put so much money because they're not paying salespeople or paying for shelf stuff to sit on the shelves in stores. They put all their money back into taking care of the farms and research on the product. So I absolutely love it. I'm not sure, not usually a product drop or name dropper, but the product, the company is called Juice Plus. So many people have been recommending it for many years. It's been around for like 25 years. And what it is just fruits and vegetables powdered up and put in a capsule.
Okay.
So it's the idea of a multivitamin, except it's from nature. It's like actual fruits and vegetables. And what they've studied is they found like the best nutrients or the best fruits that have like vitamin C, like have the real high important things like vitamin C and immune boosting things and high antioxidant levels and stuff like that. And they found like the top 15 buy out farms and let the produce vine ripen. That's another game changer. Most of the produce that we can get in the grocery store, even if you eat lots of fruits and vegetables, most of it's picked green. Like it has to be picked green. If you pick a strawberry ripe, there's no way it's going to last shipping to the grocery store and then sitting on the grocery store shelves before we can buy it, before it sits in our fridge. Like if you actually get fresh fruit, it tastes so much better because it has so much more nutrients in it. And that's the idea behind Juice Plus is they buy out entire farms, allow it to vine ripen, then freeze dry it, powder up, and put in a capsule.
Well,
So
that's
it is awesome stuff. So yeah, normally I'm
that's
not a product dropper, but yes. So I'll have you put like a link in the show notes so you can, if you're interested, check it out. But it's that's one of the best things that I recommend to all of my clients because it's fruits and veggies. I mean, I gave it to my 17-month-old little girl. Like I actually took Juice Plus as my prenatal when I was pregnant. Just there's so much nutrients, so many nutrients in something that you get from food opposed to a synthetic multivitamin.
that's so interesting. And I truthfully would always for myself try to eat the fruits and veggies, but if the fruits and veggies themselves are nutrient poor, then you do have to figure out ways to supplement them.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And then still eat fruits and veggies as much as you possibly can because it's great. And this is depending on what season you're in listening to this right now, but find the stuff, go to the farmers markets, go stop at the roadside stands. Those are always going to be way better tasting, way more nutrition, and you're usually paying the farmer, which I also like.
mm, yeah, it's fascinating to me actually what you said you gave supplements to your baby. That it sort of changed my trajectory of this conversation because I do want to talk about uh eating as kids. For example,
Yeah.
I my nutrition was, I would say, poor when I was young. Some of it is that I was born in the former Soviet Union. You didn't always have access to a lot of good food, but also when we
Mhm.
got here to the USA, I became a junk food junkie like
Yeah,
crazy.
land of the
I ate,
free.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the land of the French fries.
Yes.
This is not to say I didn't have my fair share of French fries when I was a kid in the Soviet Union. In fact, that was my older sister was babysitting for me once, and she made. I crave French fries. I think I was still in a high chair craving French fries, and she made me French fries, and she didn't realize it was fried potatoes. We didn't have a deep fryer. She didn't
Hmm.
realize she had to turn the potato slices over so they were black on one side and raw on the other, and I ate them like they were manna from heaven. So I come by my French fry addiction honestly. But I do want to talk about children, especially about there's such a, for me it was there were just certain foods I would just not, and to this day I just never want to eat onions ever 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 ever, and bell peppers I never
Mm,
want to eat them. And here's the thing, they make me feel bad in addition to I hate the way they taste. And I wonder sometimes if as kids, we don't want to eat things that maybe we're sensitive to. In other words, is there
yeah.
in your mind a relationship between food sensitivity and not wanting to eat that particular food when you're eating a little bit more intuitively as a kid?
Right. I would say yes and no. there are certain circumstances that it is really that does show up. Like for me, I've just never really gravitated to eating oranges.
Mm-hmm.
I just would rather eat something else rather than orange. And that came up on a food sensitivity that I kind of have a sensitivity to oranges. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's why I never gravitated towards that. So I do believe there's some with that. The other side of that coin, especially when it's kids, is first they it's about sight, right? So if they're not seeing their families eat it, then they're not going to eat it.
Sure.
And they kids typically go through like a picky phase too. They're just like, oh, I just want to eat like one thing, like French fries or that kind of thing. I think that's also where if you start early enough before a kid hits that picky stage, that you introduce a lot of variety of different things, like have them try avocados, every kind of vegetable and fruit that you can find, the more you're going to set the child up for wanting to eat a lot of that in the future. So I think that's a piece of it. So being more exploratory as the parent of eating different things and exposing them to different things will set them up for success later in life.
I love that you said that, only that was so not my experience. My mother would make bell peppers, like stuffed peppers, and I always hated the taste and have never liked it as
Huh.
an adult either. And
So
and
that could be that one side of the coin for you for
yeah,
that.
for sure, because every time I have eat, first of all, I think they molest the taste of the food they're in with. Everything starts tasting like bell pepper. It's yucky. But
It's like
also,
cilantro. People have that same,
exactly, yes,
cilantro's a gene that cilantro tastes like soap and it just
right.
ruins it for a portion of the population.
Exactly. But it also would give me horrible, like if I ate peppers, they would give me horrible stomach aches. So, and that's why I'm thinking about this and I'm going, okay, so if you're working with a family instead of with a single person and they're having challenges with their kids, how would you guide them towards solutions that work for their situations if they have a child who's food sensitive or if they have a child like me who just I would refuse to eat and I would sit at the table for hours on end and my mother couldn't get me to eat stuff. I just wouldn't do it. And so how do you guide families who are trying to figure out how to maneuver through nutrition when they have kids either who are picky or who have food sensitivities or both?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Really kind of thinking outside the box would be the biggest thing instead of like forcing the kid to eat something they don't like let's try something different. And one of my favorite things, especially for picky kids, is you have to try it, but you don't have to like it. Like
Mm,
at least one bite. Because a lot of times they'll just look at it and be like, no, I don't want to eat that. And it's like, no, you don't have to like it, but you got to try it once. At least try it. I think it was a different circumstance for you. Like you tried it, definitely hated it, did not want to eat it ever again.
for
And
sure.
that's one aspect of it for sure. But at least for all those, most of the time it's like they haven't even tried it a lot of times. So it's like,
Mm,
try it and then try different things. And that's kind of where the health of the parents can really help, or focusing on filling their own cup first and like eating things that are going to make them feel good. The kids can see that. Again, there is a phase that most kids go through that they get super picky. And that's just know that that's a phase and then they can go past it at the same time. So as far as the food sensitivity piece, it's kind of different for every person, every individual, but at least having them try a variety of different things. And then, I mean, last resort, I usually don't recommend a lot of food test things, sensitivity tests, but it is an option. There are some at-home tests, like Everlywell is a company that does an at-home test kits. They basically take a blood sample and you send it off to a lab and they tell you what you're sensitive to, just to
mm.
kind of get more knowledge of something like that. But just kind of experimenting and trying different things is, I would say, the easiest thing to do, and the most nutritious, actually. The more variety we eat, variety really is the spice of life. So the more variety you have in your diet, the better you're at. And that's one of the reasons why I go back to doing the the Juice Plus, because it is a variety of a whole bunch of different fruits and veggies, a lot of ones that people don't eat on a daily basis.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because we have a lot of misconceptions about what is the optimal thing to eat. I know that I ascribe to eat a rainbow, so eat lots of different
Yes.
colored foods, but
Yes.
there are lots of things that we don't have kind of an actual idea of what's really going on, in part because, frankly, and I'm distrustful of a lot of studies because I always want to know who funded the study, right? So when somebody
Right.
says there was this study, I always want to see who paid for the study. That's a very important part of me. But
It's true.
yeah, I just, it's always follow the money. But we have all of these different changes. You know, I say often, yesterday's myths are today's science, and today's myths might be tomorrow's science when we have the instrumentation to measure them. But we
Yep.
often have these misconceptions about what's really going on. And I'm sure that you encounter this when you're working with clients about their misconceptions about what's optimal nutrition, what's optimal for how you should be eating, how you should be eliminating your food, all of that stuff.
Hmm.
When you run across these, how do you debunk them for people? How do you help them figure out what is a myth and what isn't one? What is a misconception and what isn't one?
Ooh, that's a boulder to uncover right there. That's a big one.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally okay. I would say it changes so often depending on what's actually happening. That's where I would say I couldn't say that there's a clear-cut response to that, to be honest, just
Hmm.
because it's so different as far as the experience of the person's going through what's actually happening. But I can say one thing that is kind of resounding across the board is variety is key. And it that can be challenging because most people, we get into routines. Routines are pretty common for us to eat the same things because it's easy. We know it works, or but just to kind of go outside your comfort zone a little bit and try things that you've never tried before. Try things, fruits, veggies. Believe it or not, there are so many fruits in the world that you can eat a different fruit every day of your life and not eat the same one twice. But
I,
how many are in the grocery store? Like six?
right? No, for sure. I agree. I agree. And I, who have
So,
always loved fruit, would be, except for, I have never found a fruit I didn't love except for one. And I tried,
okay.
yeah, star fruit. I just don't find them, they look pretty, but they don't taste good.
Ooh, you
But
need a ripe one. Ripe one picked
maybe
off a
that's,
tree
yeah,
makes a difference.
maybe because I tried it. I'm like, this is sweet, but it's
It's
got a
not really
weird
sweet. Yeah, it's
texture.
almost
It's,
sour.
I didn't, anyway, regardless of anything, it was not my favorite. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it's fascinating to me that we are looking at this stuff and you're saying variety, and I agree with variety. I'm vegan, and so it's very easy for me to have a variety of fruits and veggies.
Yeah.
And then I think about the process. You eat your, you know, the saliva starts the digestive process. It goes all the way through. And then we end up in a situation where we poop and a lot of us don't think about it, right? We are taught pretty early on, you do your business, you don't talk about it, you
Yep.
flush, you wash your hands, you leave.
Yep.
And that's something to me that is, it's one of those things where we will take a lot of time to prepare our food sometimes, or we'll
Yeah.
eat mindlessly, but we don't necessarily take a lot of time on the other end. And I'm not saying that it should be like, let's study the poop as much as we prepare our food, but maybe you'll say differently. But I know, Nikki, that you have a special little treat for anybody
Yes.
who's listening that might give them a little bit more of an opportunity to study their poop. So I would love it if you talk
Yes.
about what you call the poop pop quiz.
Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly what I was going there before you asked the question. I love it. Um the Yeah, that is one of my kind of, I would say, freebies. Like, check it out. You don't really, again, you don't you said take so much time when you're preparing food. You do not need to take that much time assessing your poop, but Feel like, know what it comes out of your body. Know that the ideal is should be soft serve ice cream 2 to 3 times a day. If you're anywhere from that, you might have something going on. So take the quiz. I actually will put it in the show notes. I have a poop pop quiz. Everyone that's made it to this part, pop quiz. How are you doing? What's going on in the bathroom? How is your digestion feeling? How stressed are you? It's kind of a handful of different questions that really assesses what's going on that might point towards one thing or another as far as a dysfunction within the body. So it's kind of, what are your turds telling you about your health? Really is kind of what it is about.
I love
I
it.
promise there's no pictures, there's no nothing, there's nothing that's off color and gross. It's questions.
Unless you're on the TV show Friends, in which case you'll be sending emojis about what your poop look
Right.
like.
And I will watch that. I will watch that episode. That sounds great. But
So
yes.
this is great. I am so glad that you joined me for the show, and I know you've got to run, but I wanted to say that you have Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and
Yep.
all of those are going to be, and YouTube and Pinterest, and Pinterest is pictures, so be aware. If you're going to go to see Nikki's Pinterest, I'm going to put all of
Oh, it's
that
not bad. It's
stuff.
not bad.
No, I'm sure it's not, but the thing is, I feel like we need to sort of destigmatize the conversation about poop because it's such an important part of our lives. Even though we may not necessarily want to talk about it, we probably should be. So
Correct.
I will
Correct.
put all of the links to all of your socials on there. And I know you've got to run, so I'm going to ask you the two last questions that I ask everybody on the show real quick. But first, Nikki, again, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a fantastic conversation, and you are right. You make poop fun.
Yay!
So the penultimate question is, what is the thing that makes you get out of bed in the morning? And I don't mean your alarm.
Ooh. Honestly, excited to change the world for a better place. Getting out, helping people, that is the most gratifying and satisfying thing for me is when a client comes to me and is like, "Oh my God, I have so much more energy. I had no idea how sick I was." Like that just lights me up to no end. I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. So again, Nikki, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I'm going to put all the stuff in the show notes. And I have just one last question before you take off. And the question is this. If you had an airplane, environmentally friendly, of course, that
Yeah.
could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Poop is important. Pay attention to what's coming out of your body.
There you go. That's perfect. All righty. So, Nikki, once again, thank you so much for joining me on the show. And I'm super grateful you took the time.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited. This was an enlightening and enjoyable conversation. Thank you.
For me as well. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Solutions Podcast, reminding you, as always, you can find all the links in the show notes. And I always want you to remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the show if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2024. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.